All right, so we're going to do some watercolor experiments, and you can choose any two colors. I'm going to choose red and blue. So I'm just activating my red and blue with water, okay? And the first experiment we're going to do is called wet on wet. And you need to start with just water, no color. Okay, so you can just take water, and I want you to paint a kind of rectangle here. It's kind of hard to see, of water. And then it's going to start to soak in. I mean, on the camera, you can't see it at all. And I want you, after it soaks in, I want you to add more water. You want it to be puddly. You want it to be air on the side of more water, right? Lots more water. Okay, it should just be water on there like a swimming pool. Okay, and then take one of your colors and really scrub the pan. So when I say scrub the pan, I mean put your brush in and move it around as much as possible to get as much pigment on that brush as possible. So it's nice bright pigment, and it should be so drippy that it just drips like that. Do you guys see that? Should I do it again? Watch the camera. It just goes like that. Isn't that cool? And then you can add a second color there if you want. This is called wet in wet. And this makes a very nice watercolory type effect. You can just touch it down if you want to. You can do multiple layers, okay? But this works if the paper is wet. You got to have a lot of pigment on your brush too. If you don't have a lot of pigment on your brush, it's going to just look like water. Okay, you can see how puddly it is. It's real puddly. So I think beginners on this one don't use enough water, which is fine. You're just experimenting. We're just doing our experiments right now. Okay. And when we talked about color, I'm just going to talk while you experiment. We talked about the emotions that might come with some color. Okay, some feelings, descriptive words. Well, some of these experiments also kind of could match some feelings or emotions. So as we're doing this, you can kind of take note in your head. Wow, does this make me feel happy or sad? Does this make me feel angry or calm? Or does this represent my anger? Or does this represent my calmness or my happiness or, I don't know, confusion? There could be all sorts of different feelings and emotions that this could represent. And it will be different for every person. Every person will have a different interpretation. And of course, it depends on which color you use. So we're going to be working towards a composition with using color and watercolor. And so think about the emotions as you go along, okay? Okay, we're ready for our next one. Our next one, you want to really clean off your brush. You actually want to squeeze all the water out of the brush. So I'm literally going to come here, squeeze all the water out. It is called dry brush. I'm actually going to take my paper towel and I'm going to dry it even further, really dry it out. I'm kind of squeezing it and doing a little wiggle, okay? Dry brush, so it's just like it sounds. It's a dry brush. And then you're going to get some pigment on your brush. Again, you want to kind of scrub the pan so that you get a lot of the color out from the pan here. And don't do anything yet. Then I want you to dry it again. You're just gonna roll it on the paper towel. So you're trying to get the water out, but there's still pigment in there. You can see my brush is still blue. Okay, so I'm just trying to get all the water out. Take some practice. And then instead of using the tip, like we're not like a ballerina here, we're going to use the side of it. We're going to kind of scrape. And this is dry brush. Using a dry brush to get kind of this texture here. And you can do it again with, I'm going to do it with my other color just to kind of show the technique again. So again, pigment on my brush, rolling it on the paper towel to just kind of get the water out, okay? And I'm kind of rolling it on the same spot so that I don't get the pigment out, just the water. When it's dry, and you scrape it across, you get these faint kind of scratchy lines. Let me zoom in. So now you can really see the difference between the two. And now you can see that this could maybe represent one emotion, and this might be the opposite emotion, right? This has a lot of white of the paper. It's very scratchy and light. This one is darker, it's flowy. So depending on what technique you use, you could express different emotions. Okay, so that was dry brush. Kind of fun. The next one you'll need is some table salt. And any salt will work. You can experiment with like Epsom salts and that kind of thing. I have a mixture in here of table salt and a little bit like kosher salt, a little bit rougher salt. Okay, and what you're going to do is, again, you need to have lots of water. Watercolor likes water. So I'm going to just paint in here some color. I don't care if they blend and move, that's fine. They'll just make purple. Okay, but you want it watery. You want it liquidy. I'm just kind of evening out the pigment here. Okay, so it should be moving. So you see how when I make a brush stroke, it then moves a little? It should be doing that. If not, it's not doing that, you don't have enough pigment or enough water. And then you're just going to sprinkle your salt on. Ooh, I got too much there. There's a reaction that is taking place. And as you do this, I'll just describe it. So when you eat something really salty, a lot of times you get thirsty, right? Salt is known to absorb moisture, absorb liquid, absorb water. So we can use this to our advantage to create some interesting marks here. Where you can see it's just absorbing all the liquid in there. And this is a good thing usually in like something like this. So we're using the properties of the salt to absorb up the liquid. And when it's dry, I'm going to show you an example that I have that's dry. So here's an example of salt on watercolor once it's dry. And you can actually see the individual granules and then kind of like a halo effect around it. Okay, so it gives a very distinct texture. And maybe you want to use that to express some sort of emotion. I don't know. Anger, frustration, Yeah, it's really cool. And you couldn't get that just with watercolors, right? I don't know how to get that with watercolors. So you're just gonna let this dry. Okay, so for the time being, just kind of push it up out of the way. You can take your paper towel and just where it's really, really puddly, just kind of touch the paper towel to the paper and it'll kind of start to absorb some of that liquid because otherwise this is going to take like 3 days to dry, right? So you can just kind of touch it in the areas where it's puddling, kind of at the top and the bottom. Right. So we're going to do our next 3. I'm just going to move this up here. All right. Okay, so the next technique we're going to do, again, we're going to do 3 on here. It's called lifting, and you need some paper towel. And you could also at home do this with a Kleenex, toilet paper, cotton ball, probably a Q-tip, anything that is absorbent. And you want to tear off just enough to kind of like fit in your hand and like ball up. So I just have about this much. Just scrunch it up in your hand. Okay. And when you scrunch it up, you get this texture here. We're going to use this texture to our advantage. Okay, so again, you're just going to put down some color with some liquid. Make sure that it's wet. Okay, you don't want it to be dry. The more water, the better. And obviously the more color too. Okay, you can see mine just kind of moving. So once you have all that there, I'm just going to kind of move the water around a little bit. You take your paper towel, kind of scrunching it up here, and you can press and release. And you can see it dries it, but it also leaves a very interesting texture behind. So this is called lifting. The texture I'm getting. And lifting can be used to just like if I accidentally like dropped some water, well, that's not color. If I accidentally drop some color here, I can just lift it up. And it mostly goes away. So lifting can be used for like your mistakes. It's a little bit still there. Okay. But the texture of the paper towel is really nice to get some kind of cool textural looks here. Okay, and as it dries, it'll change a little bit. So that was lifting. And then the next one you're going to need your crayon. And a lot of times especially at home, I'll just use a white candle for this. So, you know, this is wax resist. So our wax is going to be our crayon. But you know, when you're, if you ever dye Easter eggs, they give you in the dye thing a little wax crayon. Sometimes it's clear. Okay. Well, it's the same thing. It's going to resist the watercolors. So just in the middle here, I'm just going to make some marks. You just make some marks. You could do some circles or some squares. Okay. And you want to kind of push hard a little bit, not too hard, but you're trying to embed the wax into the paper here. I'll do some dots and some pluses here. Just trying to get that wax in there. And then there's little bits of wax and you don't want that to get in your brush. So I'm just gonna take these little extra bits that didn't quite get stuck down and just kind of sweep them away so that they don't get in my brush. Okay. And then I'm gonna put some watercolor over that, pretty liquidy. And at first they might not fully come out, although mine are really. But if you're having trouble seeing your marks, what you can do is you can just, again, take your paper towel and kind of wipe them away. And you really can start to see them. And I can add more color in there. Do it again. The color will, the wax will still be there. Okay, so you could have done anything with this white crayon, right? You could have made stripes or any sort of texture would be really awesome to put in here. You could do shapes, lines, that kind of thing. Okay, so that is wax resist. Okay. And the last one is probably the most difficult one. That's why I saved it for the last. And it is a gradient. So we've done a gradient in our book before, right? When we did this, these were gradients, right? Gradients, it was named gradient. So a gradient is from dark to light, right? It's like a value scale that's smooth, from dark to light. And so in color, looks like this. Okay. It is difficult. It's a difficult thing to do as a beginner. This is hard. So just try it this first time. Okay. So I'm just gonna do it in red. Red seems to really catch the camera. So I'm gonna just take as much pigment as I can on my brush, really scrubbing the pan. I'm just gonna put lots of juicy color, liquidy color down there. Just make a line. And before it dries too much, I'm going to rinse my brush. And then just with the water on my brush, I'm going to pull it down. See how it flowed downwards? Okay. And if it didn't flow very much, you can help it with your brush. But if it didn't flow very much, you should probably get more water. Okay. And more water on my brush. And I'm letting it flow down even further. See how the color kind of travels down? And you might have to, if it gets really puddly, you might have to lift up a little bit just to take some of that wetness away because you keep adding water. So then you're going to slowly add more water as you go down. You might have to help it a little. So I'm just using my brush to kind of help the pigment go down. So it wasn't very pink down here or red down here. So I was getting it down further. So this is a difficult thing for a beginner to do. Okay. And I've done this probably 875 times. So you can see mine probably I'm making it probably look easy, which I'm not meaning to, but you can see now it's dark to light. And when it dries, you'll really be able to see it. Let's see if I can find my, right? You'll really be able to see the dark to light. Okay, so What you're going to do is with these 6 experiments, you're going to let them sit overnight. And if you're at home, you might want to take this and like put it up somewhere where little cats or dogs or brothers and sisters, moms and dads can't mess it up and move it around. And let it sit and dry flat. And tomorrow during your asynchronous time, I have a video where I show you how to put them in your journal and label them. Okay, it's not rocket science, but that will be for tomorrow's asynchronous work. Okay, so if you're at home, just put them somewhere flat to dry. Okay.